My name is Bethany, and I was 9 years old the first time I died. They say most children remember birthdays and holidays. I remember the smell of antiseptic, the stiff sheets on a hospital bed, the sound of my mother whispering prayers she wasn't sure she believed in. I had been sick for weeks. First, it was just a cough. Then a fever that wouldn't break. Then the pain started, deep in my chest, like something sharp was pressing against my lungs every time I breathed. They called it pneumonia, but it didn't matter what they called it. What mattered was that I was slipping away. I remember floating in and out of consciousness. Sometimes I'd wake up and see doctors speaking in hushed tones. Sometimes I'd hear the beep of machines that counted heartbeats like ticking time bombs. And sometimes I'd dream of light. But this one moment, the one I want to tell you about, wasn't a dream. It was the night the machines went silent. I felt it first. A loosening, like a thread being pulled from a tightly wound knot. My breathing slowed. My vision blurred. But I wasn't scared. It felt peaceful, as though the fear had been something my body carried, not my soul. And then it happened. There was a pop, almost like the sound you hear underwater when you surface too fast. And suddenly, I was above the room, looking down at my own body. I was still, pale, my little chest barely moving. My mother had collapsed in a chair, hands pressed to her lips. A nurse stood in the corner, frozen, her hand hovering over a red button. And the doctor, his face was grim, determined. He was about to begin CPR. I should have panicked. I should have tried to scream. But instead, I turned, because I felt someone behind me. There was a tunnel. I know how cliché that sounds. I've heard people scoff at it. But it wasn't a tunnel made of walls or earth. It was made of light. And I was moving through it, fast, yet not rushing. It was as though time didn't exist there. I didn't feel like a child anymore. I felt like something eternal. At the end of the tunnel was a brilliance I can't describe. Not white, not golden, but a combination of both, and more. It was alive. And from that light stepped a figure. At first, I couldn't see his face. But I knew. Every fiber of me knew. It was Jesus. And the moment I recognized him, everything in me fell still. It wasn't fear or awe that made me silent. It was love. Love like I had never known. He reached out his hand, and I knew it wasn't to lead me anywhere or command me. It was simply to be with me. I took it, and suddenly I was in a garden. It was unlike any garden I've ever seen on earth. The grass shimmered, not green but iridescent. Flowers bloomed in colors I didn't have names for. And the sky, it wasn't just above me. It was around me, like the whole place was wrapped in peace. Jesus walked beside me. We didn't talk with our mouths. We just communicated. He would think, and I would understand. "You are safe, Bethany. You are home," he said. Home. I remember thinking, but I'm only 9. And he smiled. Oh, what a smile. It felt like sunrise and music and hugs, and everything I ever wanted from a father figure rolled into one expression. He said, "You are eternal. Age is only a moment in your journey." I wanted to stay there forever, but he had more to show me. Jesus led me deeper into the garden, but it wasn't like walking on earth. My feet didn't really touch the ground. It felt like floating, yet with every step, I felt more real than I'd ever felt before. There were no shadows here, no pain, just colors and sensations that danced together like music made of light. I looked around, my eyes wide like a child in wonder, because I was, in every way. I saw a stream nearby. Its water wasn't just clear, it was luminous, like liquid light. Tiny glowing fish darted beneath its surface, and they shimmered like stars. "Is this heaven?" I asked him, not with words, but with a question in my soul. He paused, turning toward me, and when he looked into my eyes, I felt like he was looking through every version of me, the little girl I was, the woman I might one day become, and something older, wiser, that had always existed. Jesus responded, "This is a part of the kingdom. A glimpse. A reflection of what has always been. That answer stirred something deep in me, like I was remembering something I had forgotten a long, long time ago. He led me to a large tree, the biggest I'd ever seen. Its trunk was silver and smooth, and its leaves sparkled like glass. We sat beneath it, and that's when the visions began. He placed his hand over my heart, and suddenly, I wasn't in the garden anymore. I saw Earth, not as I knew it, but through a higher lens. Cities glittering at night like networks of nerves. Rivers flowing like lifeblood. People walking through their daily lives, their thoughts and pain visible as streams of energy around them. I saw how every act of kindness, no matter how small, created a ripple. I saw how anger, bitterness, and cruelty left marks that stretched like cracks in glass. But more than that, I saw possibility. I saw what could be. Children learning without fear. Teachers lighting up with joy as they guided. Mothers and fathers listening, really listening, to their children. I saw the sick being healed through compassion. I saw the earth healing as people began to love one another, not for what they looked like or what they believed, but simply because they were. I cried, not because it was sad, but because it was so beautiful. Then the vision shifted, and I saw myself, older, stronger, speaking in front of people, writing books, telling stories, not because I wanted to be famous, but because I needed them to know, to remember. You will return, Jesus said. Your path will not be easy, but you will not be alone. I looked at him, confused. Why me? I'm just a child. And he smiled again. Oh, that smile could melt stone. Jesus replied, the size of the soul is not measured by years. You were chosen before time. You carry light, Bethany, and the world needs light. We remained under that ancient tree, Jesus and I, as the visions faded. But their warmth lingered inside me like sunlight on skin. The garden around us shimmered softly. I remember thinking, this place is alive. The flowers didn't just sway in the wind, they seemed to listen. The air itself hummed with joy. It was as though every blade of grass, every petal, knew who he was, and worshipped him simply by existing. And then, the questions began. Not from him, but from me. In life, I had always been full of questions, the kind that teachers often waved away. But here, I felt no fear of asking. No fear of being too curious or too small. So I asked the first thing that bubbled up inside me. Why do people have to hurt so much? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he placed his hand on the tree, and the bark began to ripple. I saw images, not just of one person, but of many. A boy who was bullied at school. A woman sobbing into a pillow at night. An old man sitting alone on a bench, staring at nothing. Each one glowed with a faint, flickering light. And then I saw it, golden threads connecting them. Threads of compassion, of prayer, of invisible kindness. Jesus turned to me and said, suffering awakens the heart to its need for others. In the shadows, people discover their capacity to love. I didn't understand it completely, not then, but I felt the truth of it, like it had been stitched into the fabric of my soul before I was born. I asked again, what happens to those who don't believe in you? There was no anger in his expression, no thunder or judgment, only sorrow, the kind that wells up when someone chooses to stay in the dark when the door to light has always been open. He answered gently, belief is not a contract, Bethany. It is a recognition of love. Some walk their whole lives without seeing it. Others carry it without ever naming it. I look at the heart, not the label. That answer broke something open in me, because I knew then, heaven was bigger than we imagined, wider, deeper, and God's mercy, it reached into corners we didn't even know existed. I looked down at my hands, small, pale, glowing slightly. I whispered, will I stay here forever? Jesus looked at me, then with such tenderness I thought I might cry again. You can, if you wish, but the story that was written for you is not finished. I turned away. I don't want to go back. It hurts down there. People forget how to love. They forget what matters. And I'm just a kid. What difference can I make? He knelt beside me, took my hand. Jesus whispered, "Even a candle lights a whole room in darkness. And you, Bethany, you are not a candle. You are a lighthouse." And then he said something I will never forget, something I still hold on to every time the world feels cold. There will come a time when your words will heal, when your story will awaken others, when your voice will echo through hearts that have stopped listening. And in that moment, you will remember this garden. He rose, and together we walked further. We came upon a place in the garden that looked like a circle of fireflies. At the center was a pool of still water. As we approached, the water came alive, swirling, glowing, forming images. I saw my family. My mother, still in the hospital room, clutching a small cross to her chest. My father, who had flown in from another city, his hands trembling as he waited for news. I saw my baby brother, asleep in a chair, unaware that his sister was dying. And I felt torn. The garden felt like home. But love was calling me back. Not duty, not obligation, but love. Jesus turned to me once more. His voice was soft, but it carried more strength than thunder. "It is your choice, Bethany. The door is open both ways." I closed my eyes, and I remembered the time my mother had stayed up all night brushing my hair because I had lice. The day my brother cried because I shared my only chocolate bar. The way my father once held my hand at the zoo, even though I was too old. These weren't just memories. They were reasons to live. I opened my eyes, and I looked at him. "I want to go back." His face lit with peace. "There will be pain," he said, "but there will also be wonder." He touched my forehead, and suddenly I was falling, not down, but inward, back through the tunnel of light, back through the sound of wind and whispering stars. I heard his final words echo as the garden faded. "You are not just returning. You are being sent." It wasn't sudden, like waking from a dream. It was slow, like being pulled upward from deep, warm water into cold, blinding daylight. My first awareness was the weight in my limbs, my eyelids, my breath. I heard beeping, soft voices, and someone crying. And then a gasp, my mother's gasp. I opened my eyes. I was back in the hospital, back in the body that had felt so far away. But everything had changed. My vision blurred with tears, not because of pain, but because I could still feel the garden in my chest, like a heartbeat made of light. I could still smell the flowers that didn't grow on earth. I could still hear his voice echoing through my bones. But no one else could. Not yet. The days that followed were confusing. The doctors called it a miracle. My vitals had flatlined for just over 4 minutes. They said the odds of survival, especially for a child, were nearly zero. But I had survived. And I had come back with something I couldn't explain. At first, I tried to tell them about the light, about Jesus, about the garden and the visions. But the looks I got made me stop. Even my mother, who clutched her rosary like it was life itself, stared at me with a softness that masked concern. "You were dreaming," she whispered. "Your brain was just overwhelmed." But I knew better. My soul knew better. School was harder. Kids teased me because I had missed so many weeks. They called me Ghost Girl and said I had gone to heaven because I was weird. I tried to laugh it off. But deep inside, I was grieving. Not for my life, but for the place I had left behind. That's when the second change began. I started seeing things. Not ghosts. Not angels. Just energy. When someone was kind, I saw golden flickers rise off their skin, like little fireflies. When someone was angry, their shadow seemed darker, thicker, even in full light. And sometimes I heard whispers. Not in my ears. In my heart. I heard things like, "She needs someone to listen. He's afraid of being left out." They are breaking inside. It was like I was hearing people's hearts beneath their words. I told no one, but I paid attention. I began sitting with the lonely kids. Not because I wanted to be good, but because I felt their ache. I knew it like my own skin. And something strange happened. They started to smile. Not right away, but slowly, like little suns warming in spring. I helped a boy named Jonah who never spoke in class. One day, I slipped him a note that just said, "You matter more than they know." He looked at me with wide eyes, then cried. He hadn't spoken in 6 weeks. But that day, he whispered, "Thank you." I began to keep a journal. In it, I wrote everything I remembered from the garden. Every word Jesus had spoken. Every vision. Every image. I was terrified I'd forget. And for a while, I did forget. Not all of it, but the clarity faded. Like morning fog swallowing a dream. The longer I was on Earth, the more human I felt. I got sick again a few years later, nothing serious, but that night, in fevered sleep, I heard him again. Just one sentence. "Remember why you returned." So I began to write more seriously. By the time I was 16, I had written 3 notebooks full of my experience. I still hadn't shared them. Until one day, a teacher, Mrs. Ikenna, asked me to stay after class. She had read an essay I wrote, a simple piece about compassion. But apparently, it hit something in her. She looked me in the eyes, and I saw it. That golden flicker. "You've seen something," she said softly. "Haven't you?" My chest tightened. My fingers trembled. I nodded. She didn't ask for proof. She didn't laugh. She just said, "Don't ever hide that light." That night, I began organizing my journal into a story. Not for school. Not for fame. But because I knew someone out there needed it. Someone standing on the edge. Someone ready to give up. Someone who needed to know what I had seen. That love was real. That they were not forgotten. That light was still calling them home. By the time I turned 20, I had spoken in 3 community centers. By 25, I had written a small book. Not everything, just fragments, messages, stories that came to me during meditation or dreams. And always, the garden waited inside me. I'd feel it in quiet moments, in the way sunlight hit a tree just right, in the sound of laughter through tears, in the presence of someone holding another's hand in a hospital hallway. I never moved on from that day. I moved forward with it. I used to wonder if the garden was a one-time miracle, a child's glimpse into a realm too big to understand. But as the years passed, I realized it wasn't a destination. It was an invitation to carry heaven here on earth. I turned 34 the year I gave my first public talk about my near-death experience. It was in a church basement with metal chairs and humming fluorescent lights. I stood in front of 15 strangers, hands shaking, voice trembling, heart pounding with every beat. I thought, they'll think I'm crazy. But when I spoke, when I began to share what I had seen, what I had heard, the room went quiet. Not a single person looked away. Not one laughed. Instead, they leaned in. They leaned into every word like it was water, and they were thirsty. By the end, several people were crying. One woman came up to me and whispered, "I lost my daughter last year. I've been so angry at God. But now, I think I understand. Thank you." That's when it clicked. The gift wasn't the garden. The gift was the story of the garden. I began traveling. Not far at first. Then further. I spoke at spiritual centers, grief circles, school gatherings. I was never a preacher. I didn't try to convert. I simply told them the truth of what I saw. I told them that Jesus was not a symbol of rules or punishment, but the living presence of love so vast, it redefined the word. I told them that even in their darkest moments, especially in those moments, the divine was near. I told them the question he asked me under that glowing tree. What have you done with the love you were given? And I watched something amazing happen again and again. People would begin to weep, not because of sorrow, but because they remembered. Somewhere deep inside, they remembered the light, the garden, the voice. Years passed. My work grew. I wrote more books. I trained counselors to recognize spiritual sensitivity in children. I helped form groups for people who had similar experiences, who had touched the edge of eternity and returned with stories too big for Sunday school. I was 51 the day I received a letter. It came in a pale blue envelope with handwriting that looked familiar. It was from a boy I had known long ago, Jonah. He wrote, "Bethany, you may not remember me, but you once gave me a note in school." I was mute then. I had stopped speaking after my dad passed. Your note was simple. Just one sentence. "You matter more than they know." That note saved my life. I'm now a teacher. I try to do for others what you did for me. I've always wondered what made you so kind. Today I saw a video of your talk, and I cried. Now I understand. Thank you for returning. I held that letter to my chest and sobbed. All those years, all the pain, all the silence, all the strange visions, the loneliness, the courage it took to speak. It was worth it. For that one life. It was all worth it. There's something else I want to tell you, something I've never told publicly. It happened just a few years ago. I was meditating near a lake, far from the noise of the world. It was quiet. The water was still. The sky glowed with evening fire. And suddenly, I wasn't alone. I didn't see him, not as clearly as before. But I felt him. I felt Jesus standing behind me, just like he did in the garden. And I heard his voice. "You have lit the way. Now rest in the knowing. The seeds you planted will become forests." Then I saw them. Thousands of lights flickering across the world. Some small. Some blazing bright. All of them lit by a story. If you're hearing this now, maybe you're one of those lights. Maybe you've been walking in the dark, wondering if anyone sees you. Maybe you've felt like giving up. Let me remind you, you are seen. You are known. You are deeply loved. And you carry a light this world needs. Not because you are perfect, but because you are real. You are the story. You are the return.